Just gotta say it. So I moved through it. I'm a little nervous, and then like now that it's just me and you, I was like, oh man, here I go.
You
I gotta
really?
be on the yeah, just like a little bit,
No
And I
way.
just gotta like,
I mean, yeah, don't stress about it too much.
I just gotta say it to work
You guys
through
gotta
it. Yeah,
say
I'm like, I just gotta say that this is how I'm feeling.
because everyone's gonna listen to this one.
Because ever all the people that listen to it.
So, okay, I want to talk to you about your trip to Origin,
Yeah,
but I also wanted to kind of set the stage, and because I was thinking about you, and I was like, oh, Jorge's been here for a long time, and then I was thinking about all the different hats that you've worn.
yeah,
Because right now you're the team leader in the kitchen,
yeah.
but so I'm gonna go through these boxes, and you can tell me yes or no. Like started as concierge in the cafe.
Yes,
And then, obviously barista and everything. You were a coordinator in the cafe.
yes.
Correct. But you were never a cafe team leader, or were you?
I was a cafe team
At
leader. I was a
Abbott
cafe
Square?
team leader at Abbott Square, and I ran Portola.
Okay. See, my timeline's all blown out.
It's okay.
And then you also worked in the roastery for a short stint.
I worked in the roastery right before I became a coordinator, and then I also did some like internal marketing for us with like the news.
Did you take over for Alyssa when she left at Portola? Was that the timeline, or no? Is it different?
No, it's different. I took over for Levi,
Okay. Okay.
which was really interesting because he was my TL, and then he immediately like I became his TL
Because he
which
was still
kinda-
working for a while after I
Yeah.
knew. Okay, you might be the most decorated Cat and Cloud employee in terms of
departments.
like passport wise.
Yeah.
Like if we were gonna go stamp for stamp on passports, because you've got a little roastery dabbling, basically every position in retail, and now back of house on
Yeah.
top of that. Crazy.
It's I feel super thankful to work somewhere that was willing to let me, because I love just learning about different things when I'm obsessed. And I think the thing I'm obsessed with most right now is like hospitality, and seeing that in all the different parts of the company was really cool to like watch happen.
I had such a killer conversation yesterday with the gentleman. I forget his name. He's the general manager. He's setting up the big hotel that they're building right across the street from the boardwalk.
Okay. Yeah.
And he's essentially this hired gun who goes around and opens these gigantic entities, and he was meeting with Mark for coffee. And I thought it was really cool because on one end, he's a general manager, and then he's got one other dude on staff, and they are charged with getting this thing open. And they're already behind, but they're probably going to be open in August. And it's just like thing costs, gosh, it's got to cost hundreds of millions of dollars
Yeah.
to build out. And he's got to do everything from getting the permitting dialed to, he's like, in the next month or two, we're going to hire an executive chef because there's 2 restaurants on site. There's a coffee bar on site. So he's on one end, he's managing this big picture of what does it take to build out a hotel from scratch. And then on the other hand, he's meeting with Mark, and he's saying, yeah, it'd be really cool if we could figure out something for our guests so they could come over and, do some sort of coffee tasting or a roastery tour or kind of peek behind the curtain. And he's really juiced on getting that, you said hospitality. So he's really juiced on this
Yeah.
guest experience, and he's got to do it from both angles, like the big and the small, like what's going to make it feel really special. And I was just like blown away. I'm like, I can't even believe you're here, dude. Like, what are you doing here?
That's an insane amount of brain power to juggle all
Right.
of those things. Yeah.
Because if I was opening up a cafe, I wouldn't be meeting with our milk vendor,
Yeah.
being like, hey, what can we do on the milk side of things? So it was just kind of cool. Yeah, I don't know. Super, super inspiring. And I was like,
Yeah.
I might have more gas in the tank, So you just went to Colombia.
Yes.
Yeah. First time to Origin, or you'd been once before?
No, that was my first time to Origin. Yeah.
And you'd had your hat in the ring for a while.
Yeah, I've been here 5 years now. I just celebrated 5 years this year.
So, okay. We talked to Dulce about this like a week ago. And so I'm just going to ask you these broad sweeping questions, and you can kind of fill in however you want. So it's like, why did you want to go in the first place?
I think, okay, so I was like super patient with going because I knew, like, I don't know, like it was just if it was going to happen, it was going to be amazing and I was going to want to go. And then it happened. And for me, it was completing a story that I already knew and heard about, but I knew that seeing it in person would bring me just like a broader perspective and just fill me up. I think a lot because it was a missing, like I've gotten to be a barista, be a concierge, like work in the roastery and hand sticker bags, like load tons of bags of coffee by hand and get to speak to this unseen side of coffee that I think isn't realized by our guests all the time. And so for me, this was like a missing piece where I'm like, I want to be able to tell this story well or better than like the to the best of my ability. And in order to tell that side of coffee, like seeing it in person was just gonna like be that missing piece for me to be able to like speak it to the guest, I think on another level like I really wanted to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was what did it feel like? So you guys probably flew into Bogota, I'm imagining, and then a puddle jumper from there. Is that what happened?
I hate to say that traveling is exhausting because I'm getting to travel. So to like say that it's
fair.
it feels
it
a little
is exhausting, right?
Yeah.
You're like, I'm on vacation and I'm so tired.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
But I was thoroughly excited the whole way. Like I had no idea what to expect, or what was I gonna see. Like Dulce was kind of ambiguous with the whole thing. She's like, you're going to get to meet some producers, which I really enjoyed because it made everything a really pleasant surprise. And just like, there was no like preconceived notions or like expectations. It was all just like, this is happening. And it's all just like in the moment. And so it was really cool to like fly into Bogota, see a big city for like a second, and then immediately like, not immediately. We stopped in Cali when we first got there, and that was really cool. The people who showed us around were really amazing. And they like the True Heroes who were going to host us had actually something to do last minute. So we ended up getting a tour of Cali. They were really cool because they were always thinking about like, how are we going to host them? And so then they like set up this tour for Cali where we got to go see like this famous statue and like take a picture. Like I had told them I was really into food, so they're like, cool, we're going to taste these 2 spots and then we're going to head to like the farm or to the finca. And so we got there, they drove us to like this random fruit stand at like a lookout with the statue. And immediately just like we had this thing called lulada, which is made out of lulo, which is this really cool fruit that tastes like celery and passion fruit fused together in the best way possible. Or it's celery root and passion fruit. And like I got to experience that and was immediately like, oh, this is going to be a fun trip because I'm just going to get to taste things that I've never tasted.
Is it like a passion fruit type fruit or know what I mean?
It's like I got to pull up.
Because Colombia was the first origin trip I ever went to as well.
Yeah.
We flew into Bogota and then flew out to...
It's like yeah.
Wait. Oh, weird. It looks just... So it is a type of passion fruit, maybe? Like
maybe.
So we went to Bogota, flew out to Nariño, and then... Or not Nariño, sorry. Armenia. And then when we got to where we were staying, they had something that was like that. Granadilla is what they called it. So it's like another type of passion fruit where you crack it open. It's got all those like... It looks like alien or something.
Yeah.
Like these sweet, sticky things. And I always remember that, and I'd never had anything in that family. And I was like, what the hell is this? This is crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you had that in Cali.
I had that in Cali, and then we went to this restaurant where they served traditional like Colombian food, and I had this, it was almost like a curry. They called it a cazuela. And instead of thickening it with like a cream or like coconut milk, they used plantain and blended it into it. And that was really good. And then I went to my first coffee shop in Colombia, like immediately after that.
What was that like?
It was fun because the person we were with was talking to us and he's like, how do you know if it's a specialty coffee shop? Like I drink coffee, but I don't really. And I was like, there's an aesthetic. And I was trying to describe it to him. And like my Spanish is practiced, but it's not like where I'd want it to be. And so I was like trying to describe it to him to the best that I could. And I was like, you're just going to know when we get there. And we got there and it's a 3-story building and we walked into the bottom one and I was immediately like, this isn't it. And he was like, "What do you mean? Let's just ask." Like, I was like, "No. This isn't the coffee shop we're looking for." And then it was funny because like he asked, and then they were like, "Oh yeah, it's upstairs." And then we rang this bell, which was really cool. And they had this gate, and someone came down, opened the gate for us, and like led us upstairs. And we get in there, and there's like a hand sealing machine. There's a place that looks like a living room with a table where the baristas like would do pour overs for you. There's like a Linnea Mini like on display, and then there's like records, and then there's like another like level to it where there's a ton of. And I was like,
This is it.
this is what I'm trying to describe to you.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So so there was another coffee shop downstairs, and then there was one upstairs.
It was like it was like a cafe restaurant.
Got it.
underneath.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you got to go through the secret magic door to get to the coffee
to
shop.
get to the actual coffee shop.
How was the coffee?
It was amazing.
Yeah.
They took us there. He took us there specifically because the Trujillos had something there that was like on available for that coffee shop specifically. And it was an amazing coffee. Like they made it for us on a pour over. I think it was if I remember right, it was some sort of natural, and it was like super floral, super sweet, and just like we were drinking it, and the guy we were with was like, oh yeah, this is okay. I see what you mean now.
Okay.
And that was really fun to see him light up like that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you weren't even in Cali for a day. It was just
It was a couple
like
hours.
a few hours or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's another pretty big city. Okay. Then a puddle jumper out to where?
It was Pescador, if I remember right, in Cauca.
Okay.
And it was like a 2.5 hour drive.
Oh, you drove.
We did drive.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't drive. There was
Sure.
somebody
Somebody
driving.
drove.
Yeah, and the road was insane because it was this mountainous road, and Dulce was sleeping, which I was like, maybe that's what I should have done. Because like the driving was crazy. It was like 1 lane road. You could tell that it was like a main road because there were so many cars, and the person who was driving us was like passing cars on the single lane like hill road, like around blind corners, and I was like, you know this road, you clearly drive it. Like
It's crazy,
Yeah.
right? I had two similar experiences. That one in like not on a single lane road, but in Bogota, just in the city driving. I went on a couple buses, and just how gnarly it's not dialed like in the US where, okay, this is stop, and this is go. It's more suggestions is what it feels like. And people are much more comfortable with that free flowing style of traffic. So you got a lot of bobbing and weaving.
Yeah.
And then when Jared and Charles and I went to Antigua and we went out to the lake, on the way back, it was dark, 1 lane, and it was like that. Like people are just coming around, and I'm just like, dude, I'm passing this bus, and we might just not make it. I don't know. So stressful.
Yeah. There seems to be a logic to it. I don't want to say it's like, because like I like even just from driving in like Mexico, that's a great too. But there's like this sense of driving that happens where it's like there's just this flow, and you're either in the flow or you're not in the flow, and you're gonna like have a hard time.
Yeah. That's what I felt like too. It didn't feel like people were being crazy. They're just like, this is what we do here.
Yeah.
And I'm an outsider looking in, being like, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
We'll see. Yeah, that's freaking awesome. So you were in Cauca then?
Yeah. And then now we're in Cauca, and we arrive at Patio Bonito, and we're greeted by Angela, who's Carlos Trujillo's wife, and just like this amazing lady. I probably hung out with her more during the trip out of like anyone when we were at the finca. I just really enjoyed my time with her. She was like, I asked her to talk to me about all her food and like what she's using and like what like goes into traditional recipes, because I was like, I want to just take as much as I can with me back. Because I think, especially I saw there, like coffee and food were really interlinked in this way that I don't always see here. And I thought it was something that was really amazing. And I was like, I need to bring just like a glimmer of this back with me.
What made you like feel like they were linked up? Like what were some of the things that were happening?
There was just like some really cool, like food was always served alongside of it. It was just like an obvious thing that was going to happen. And then even to the point where there was this competition in Pasto that was called Coffee Masters, and they were they would hold this like competition for over like a month, and each cafe would have a coffee that they wanted to highlight, and they would make a food suggestion that goes alongside of it, and whoever did like the best of that combination was like the winner of the competition. um and I don't see that as frequently here, and like this is like a little bit of a tangent, but I was trying to explain this to Dulce, and I'm like, sometimes coffee and like like good hospitality experience feels a little separated here.
Yeah.
In the way where I was like, I think the best example of it is like I went to an Italian restaurant and we were trying to choose a wine, and they were like, you can't taste the wines and you can't choose the wine without having a sommelier like choose the wine for you. And I was like, okay, in some ways this is cool. And then I ordered coffee at that same restaurant, and like there's a machine in the back that looked like it hadn't been touched in ages.
Yeah.
And like I remember seeing the tamper on the machine, and the person who pulled the shot for us moved it like it was in their way.
Right.
And then just pulled the shot. And it was just like, I was like, you know,
that's been kind of the ongoing joke, like since way back in the day, you know, pre-social media, when we were all coffee geeking out on different forums and stuff.
Yeah.
One of the big topics of discussion was, and they were talking about specifically fine dining. When is fine dining gonna catch up with this coffee thing? Or, you know what I mean? It's like, depending on what you're eating, like you said, there's a selection of wines that may or may not go with each individual course, and that is very curated. You know, someone's whole job is to curate the wine menu, and they've got, of course, this long, you know, hundreds of years of tradition that led up to that point. And us in specialty, we don't really have that yet. And then coffee for most of those places is like an afterthought. And the place that they would use back then, which is still open today, is the French Laundry, Thomas Keller's place, up north. And it was just like, at the time, it was like that was the one. And it's like, you can eat the best meal of your life and then follow it up by just the most mediocre cup of coffee. That it's just weird because it's the last thing that you drink.
Yeah.
Right? It's the last taste in your mouth. It's after the dessert course, and you're just, well, that's strange.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's funny. And then with even the other stuff, like the Coffee Masters thing, it's almost like that's not a fine dining thing, but that's more of kind of what you see in the US or places that do something similar to what we do. Is there's essentially two menus. You have a coffee menu and you have a food menu.
Yeah.
And they're not really curated together. They're completely separate. And this felt more like it was one thing.
Yeah,
like, from a thought process.
They were highlighting it as like one, like you come in and you enjoy both together, which I thought was really cool. And I'm like, oh, I need to find a way to bring this here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be really cool. The more geeky people I meet, the more people ask about like these kind of semi-private gathering, like experience-based things, tasting menu stuff, you know, like, and I'm just like, yeah, I would love to do it. Don't know how it works, you know?
Yeah.
It's like the day-to-day is already so incredibly feels full, but I think there's space for stuff like that. So
totally. And I think the way they were doing it was really cool, because it was like, it was clearly, at least to me, it felt like they were trying to do like what we want to do with coffee, where it's like we're trying to elevate it and show people that it's like this amazing thing that has so many complexities to it. And the fact that it was happening in coffee shops that were accessible to anyone, rather than just like a niche curated experience that was like, you have to pay this much.
Right. Like you're spending $150, $300 for the blue bottle thing, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But it's not. Yeah.
It's not what's going to open the world of coffee to everyone in the way that I think would be really important to.
Right.
I think the craft that it is.
Yeah. You're connecting with a much smaller audience, whereas this would be more like, yeah, everyone can enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah. For the people, so to speak. Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty cool. Were they making food on the well, okay, two questions. Were they making food on the farm? And then what was the farm like? Because there's farms of all shapes, sizes, and like, so what was it?
Totally. It was really cool to see Patio Bonito, because you go in and it feels like a small, like there's a small town, and then you go to their house and it very much feels like a part of the town, and then you like they started walking us around the finca, and I was like, oh, all of this hillside is just like different people's fincas. um and I didn't notice it at first, but then it became really massive. I was like, oh, this is like there's a lot of stuff out here. And it was really cool to see, because they would often, like, I would see them growing like their coffee next to their family members' coffee. And even though they had like all of their own projects, they also had shared projects, which I thought was really cool. That was like a very common thing to see, where there would often be like either like an organization or a group, or even down to like the like on a familial friend level, where they're like, oh yeah, this is like our shared crops. Everyone contributes here. And we can all like pull from it and like share the food with each other. And then it was really cool to see like all of the different varieties of coffee they were growing. Dulce had already mentioned it, but they had like 12 different varieties.
Yeah.
And then like at the house, they had like a lab portion, which was really cool. And I loved how accessible everything felt. Like when we got there, we also met up with two just like other producers that they know, and they were just sharing everything with them. They're like, this is how we do it. This is like our take on fermentation. This is how you do this fermentation. Paolo was very like science forward, and I loved all of like the diagrams and just like the simplified explanations of processes that she had. It was really cool to see the presentation that she had put on for us like that first day. And it was fun to see like the connection between like, oh, this is a food science that's like going on. And like it was fun to learn just like little things. Like when she was showing us like a small process of like an anaerobic fermentation, where we took green coffee, we took it through like the depulper machine, and then she had some that was already resting that was depulped, and then we took it through, or it wasn't depulped, it was we took it through the like mill that takes the fruit off initially.
Yeah, depulper,
yeah. And then there's another machine that sprays it with water and gets the mucilage off.
Okay.
Right.
Oh yeah. Was it like a tall, like, what is that called? I know.
I forget the name. That's
like
why I confuse
Panagos
it in my
makes it
head.
Maybe or something. It's a demucilager. I think that's it's called.
I think that's all that she called it. But
yeah,
it was fun to hear her talk about the science behind it, and sometimes like the science that gets thrown at coffee producers, because she was showing us like her research essentially on growing tons of different coffee, and she was like, okay, like someone came out and told us that 18 bricks is what our coffee needs to ferment at with like the sugar, and that's like, you have peak coffee when you have that. But in reality, when you're growing coffee, like you reach maybe 6 or 7 bricks of sugar with the actual like coffee cherry itself. And it was really cool to see, like she showed us like her findings, and then like she showed us the measurements.
How are they how are they measuring that?
There's a special device that's like a water. You essentially it measures the amount of water in something, and so the difference I think is just like the sugar in it. And so it's like a lens where you put a little bit of the liquid in it, you look through it, and it gives you an output.
Oh, it's a refractometer.
Refractometer.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah. So we'll use the same thing. I don't know if you've messed with. We have one in the lab to measure TDS.
I didn't know we had one.
Yeah, Dulce's got one. So you could use the same thing to dial in brewing parameters.
Right.
So it's like, sample of the coffee, shoots the light through it, and then it basically tells you like what part of the coffee is not water. So it's like, okay, the TDS on this is 1.3, and then there's an equation or an app you can use to calculate your extraction percentage. So you'll put in like how much water you put through the coffee, how much the dry coffee bed was, and then it'll give you like, 20% extraction, which is the amount of material that you have removed from the original dry coffee bed. Yeah. And then I don't know if you've seen the coffee brewing control chart.
I have seen it, but I haven't like utilized one.
Yeah, there's
really
like that.
Cool.
Essentially, there's like a sweet spot in the middle that's this combination of a certain extraction percentage and a certain total dissolved solids that gives you some sort of balance for flavor.
Yeah.
So they're using that same like refractometer tool to measure sugar content. So are they checking coffee when it's still on the tree to like note when they might want to harvest it, or
She checks it for, because okay, so she likes to ferment it at a certain, like, she does try to like follow. She's like, I do want to kind of reach the 18 bricks or as close as I can. So she does this really cool thing where she'll take the mucus of the coffee and then she adds like essentially like you can add like bacteria to it because that's what's causing it to ferment,
to ferment?
obviously.
Yeah,
And then you feed the bacteria with sugar, and so then she gets her 18 bricks, and then she ferments the coffee. And I was like, I'm like, this is really cool. This is like, and then it's fun to see the overlap between something like coffee and then like another place like wine. And you're like, these are all food sciences using the same or like similar things.
got it. So she's measuring sugar content in the co-fermentation tank and not not inner cherry. Like, okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
got you.
after she's pulled them,
Got it.
so that because she uses the mucus, the mucilage that comes from like being washed to help ferment the coffee. Essentially.
Got it. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I need to go back. It's been a while, and even just, I mean, in the past 4 years or so, the amount of just anaerobic co-fermented coffees has just gone up and up and up. More people are doing it because it's obviously an industry trend and people are intrigued by it, and the techniques are just kind of changing all the time.
Yeah, she had a hard time calling it, I think, a co-ferment because it was like, from a food science, I kind of get it because it's literally like you're just feeding the yeast.
It's just the mucilage and the
yeast.
It's
just the mucilage, and you're feeding, like, you're not. I see her perspective. I'm like, you're not really adding sugar to the end product. You're just giving food to the bacteria that's in there,
right,
and that's bolstering your fermentation.
Right. It's not to impart any additional like outside flavor to it, like people fermenting with other fruits or something like that.
Yeah. It's literally all coffee cherry, and then you're just like, you're adding a bacteria starter to it, and then you're adding food for that bacteria that you now added to your
So
coffee.
she had it all dialed in like you guys were on a cooking show or something where you're doing the first part and then, oh, let's pull this out of the oven. We got one ready right here.
Yeah.
Man, that's cool.
And she does that to people that she hosts regularly to help give them perspective of like, this is what the actual process looks like and what it, I remember the other part of it was really cool because we did the other side of it where now the coffee's dry. And this person that we were with, his name was Fiber, just really amazing human. He sat us down and he pulled out a square, just dried coffee. And he's like, this is unpick through coffee. Like, we're just going to set a timer. These are the defects we're looking for. And we're going to sit here and pick through the square of coffee.
Oh, so you're sorting?
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And so we sorted, and it took us, like, we did it like 3 times, and it took us like 15 to 20 minutes for the small square between 3 people. And he's like, all right, so now look at that bed of coffee over there. And like, it was just like like I saw what he was trying, and I already knew where he was going with the activity, but I'm like, I'm just going to let him lead me through this because I know exactly where this is going. And it's like, it's really cool that he's thinking about how to build this perspective for people.
That's really interesting. I'm like sidebarring in my mind because so they've got it's like the combination of like an educational. I mean, it's an educational hub. They've got a little school going on.
Yeah.
That's so cool, and it's a complete behind the scenes thing. Yeah.
And they're like, they don't really like call themselves an organized. Like they're like, we're a finca. We've like, it was cool to see them having the success because they told us about like getting there and like how much they had to work to get there. And it's cool to see them just be like, yeah, now we're here to like educate people on all of these things. And like, we're not really asking, like, people can come visit and we're showing them.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like they're almost, from what Dulce said too, it's like they're really aware of their farm as a brand in and of itself. She was saying they had their own set of values and like a super specific take on coffee and like the style of coffee that they're doing too.
Yeah, it was. I think Dulce nailed it when she was talking about it, where they were like, "We very much just want to highlight the taste of coffee," which I really like because I'm like, this is what we do here. This is what I do on like a daily basis. I try to highlight the taste of coffee for people to sort of like open up their palate to other things. So it was really cool to see them like just be very about that, and then have all of the presentation and the science and the information presented in this really fun, palatable way, of like, this is how we achieve that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So they had a mill on site then. They had their own depulpers and like a washing station on site.
yeah.
Yeah. And then the other coffee that was there, like you said, there's a bunch of farms back there, like different plots of land. So they're essentially a mill and a farm, and then they butt up against other farms, so they're processing. Do they own those farms as well, or they're just
No,
no?
they very much were like, this is my brother's farm, or this
Right.
is like their farm. Um, but there were like shared. They were very. It was I think really cool to see, and like they were growing a lot of different types of coffee, and then they also had some commercial coffee, and it seemed they had figured out that they're like, we do need to sell specialty coffee, but we also need commercial coffee because it provides some sort of base layer of sustainability in some way, especially with some of the programs that Colombia has in terms of like some guarantees around buying coffee, like regardless of the quality.
Correct. Yeah.
And I thought I thought that was really cool to see, because I'm like, man, like I think seeing it, like you hear about how coffee can go wrong, but then like seeing it and going to like they took us to the warehouse where they sell their coffee that was commercial or has gone like wrong, and seeing all of that coffee, I was like, it was it was crazy to try to process. I'm like, these are people's crops. Some of these people don't grow specialty coffee, and just like it sent me down this rabbit hole of just like spiraling a little bit with like, this is heavy. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Keep going on that. Like, what made it feel like heavy in what way?
It was heavy in the sense that, and it's the thing that bothered me about my experience when I went to like the Italian restaurant where they were just kind of like pulling coffee and making it like this afterthought. Because from working here, something that just kind of, in hearing you guys talk about coffee and hearing like all of the intention that goes into it, and like no matter what, I don't want to, no matter how you're growing coffee and what your end product is, it's always your life's work, in this, like it's always that person's life's work.
Right. Whether
Uh,
it's super high end specialty or ends up in the C market.
yeah, and there's so much work that goes into it, and oftentimes the difference between like the high end and like the C market is, it's just like that little bit of knowledge that some people, it's available to them, and then it just hasn't reached certain places. But it's like it's always not the same. It's always just like a lot of work.
Yeah.
And so like for me, that was one of the things that I would talk a lot about when I was over there, is like I want to show people here like how much work coffee is, and like you do need some sort of vehicle or medium that it does like really highlight it. And I do think that like serving specialty coffee allows us to do that, because you can just like change people's perspective, and you need to sort of win people over before you can like really open their minds or like just open them up to receiving new information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What's been? Did you drink coffee before you worked here?
No,
No.
this well, okay, I did drink coffee, and I had like coffee growing up, but I've never had specialty coffee growing up. Um, and I think what I really enjoyed about discovering specialty coffee is I saw all of the like this world of like, oh, you can still have like a ritual or like a tradition around drinking coffee, and now you can drink coffee that's like more so than just someone who just like burnt it to a crisp and then like mass produced it for like people to buy in the store.
Yeah. Yeah. Really, it's a really weird supply chain. It's like it's kind of fun because it can go wrong at every level and like requires a lot of like interesting work at every level. And yeah, it's like you can take something that's really incredible and just completely blow it in the roasting. You can completely blow it in like the the brewing and the service of it and fail to capture the magic that's already been put in there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's always just that's always like a really strange one to me. I don't know. I think about that. I think about that a lot. And I think about how like, okay, how, cause you're kind of talking about, cool. So there's, here, let me break down what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We're saying like, from the crappiest coffee in the world to the best coffee in the world, getting that into your cup is still a lot of work at the farm, no matter what, right?
Yeah.
Because there's still someone who's planting it, there's still someone who's tending to it, there's still someone who's picking it, even if they're not picking it super selectively, maybe they're strip picking it or whatever. Someone's doing a lot of labor to like get that to the mill and ultimately have it, you know, processed and bagged and shipped and end up somewhere
Yeah.
here, right? So, and then you've got all these little like, not small but kind of small details that separate something that's, you know, you might have like a Damian Chavez who's got good coffee unknowingly, you know, and without
Yeah.
someone like Ben Hameen to say like, hey man, this could actually be something, you know, maybe you should set this over here. He could spend his whole life just harvesting and selling sea market coffee, right?
Yeah.
So it's like it seems like what they're trying to do is open people's eyes to, this could be this. And then like that's like what our work is to help people understand why it's worth it.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because I think like 10 years ago it felt like it was enough to say we roasted this yesterday and here's a picture of where it comes from and there's a name rather than you know, just a random mill or whatever. But now it feels different. Now it feels like, okay, because honestly it's like in 2005, 6, 7, all these quote unquote specialty, like if I tasted some of that coffee now I would probably be like, this is disgusting, or it's nowhere near the caliber of green that we have today.
Yeah.
So it's like now we have to do a lot of work to say like, does the flavor actually match the description that we're putting on the bag? So it's got to have a story and it's got to be insanely delicious.
Yeah.
I don't know, that was just like a tangent in my head.
No,
Sorry, I was just like riffing on this
I
whole
think to me,
situation.
it makes me think about what you're, where I'm like, I don't want to say it's like little things, but it is a lot of small things that get discovered and then eventually become like what it is. And it's sometimes it is just as simple as like, have you tasted the own coffee that your own coffee that you're growing? Like, I don't think you realize what you're like putting out. You're putting out something amazing. And that was kind of skipping ahead a little bit. Something that was really impactful to me, like when I went to visit Carmen Conchala, like Dulce brought her a bag of her own coffee, and it was like even the crop that she was growing regularly, like the person we were with from Azahar Coffee was like you need to come and cup your own coffee. Like I'm telling you, like you guys have something cool, and like you could tell that they were hesitant because like, and there was like a lot of hesitation in terms of like I'm like, oh, these people have been burnt before someone, and like you can feel it, and they want to trust what this person is saying because they've seen some success from it. And that was, they were really amazing people, and it was hard to watch, like see that come out a little bit. And I was like, oh man, like you guys are really amazing people and you're doing some amazing work, and like I want you to like trust this guy because he's not lying to you, like and it was cool because like the Adil said touched a little bit about it, where like the people they were working with before couldn't buy the coffee anymore, and now the person that they're, or like Azahara was like, well, there's no like minimum to sell your coffee, and that was really, or minimum amount to sell your coffee to us, even though you do have to transport it. Um, and that seemed really impactful to them because they had just like lost some coffee because it didn't meet the minimum amount, or um, and I didn't quite grasp it at first, but then we went to the warehouse where Azahar was at, and Dulce's like, you see that pallet of coffee? And it was like a lot of bags. They're like, they lost twice that amount. And I was like, and it's like, like those large pallets, like
Yeah,
stacked with
stacked like.
like thoroughly. Yeah,
So they lost it to like not meeting above C market spec, or
they
what, like,
no,
it just
it was
didn't.
good. It was like specialty coffee,
They
but they
just
couldn't
couldn't
buy
sell
it
it.
for some technical reason of like weight and just like
The
the
buyer dropped
the
out on their
buyer,
end.
yeah, and
Yeah,
just like it just and so it just sat at their farm and went,
crazy.
yeah. And so, or they eventually sold it at like this really just low end commercial, and that was like hard because that is a lot of work.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's interesting how even just connecting the dots for someone, like just passing the ball to someone and saying like, "Hey, like we were gonna buy this coffee, we actually can't." Reaching out to 10 roasters to see if anybody wants to scoop it. Which again, that's a hard one too, because it's like a certain percentage of everyone's buying decisions are made well ahead of time. It's not
Yeah,
everybody has that much. Not everybody has that much flexibility to say, sure, we'll take 2 extra pallets, because a lot of the roasters are small too.
yeah,
Yeah,
and I do see it from that, and it was just yeah, it's just like it's this really delicate just like chain.
I have a friend who I won't say his name, and I've mentioned some of this before, but he's a roaster and a green buyer, been doing this for a really long time. And I'll front load this with one of my theories.
Okay,
This is me riffing. So in gonna make me sound like a grumpy old man. So one of the things you see from our industry is, relationship coffee. Like we have everything's built on relationships. And then you've got the other side of the coin, which is like we're high quality. Everything's built on quality.
yeah,
And the grumpiness in me says those two things can't actually be true all of the time. So we could take, and this hasn't happened yet, but let's take a farmer we know that we could put a name to. We could call it Damien, we could call it Wilson, we could call it Rosalia, whoever. People that we have relationships with that we're buying a lot of or all of their coffee. Sooner or later, for whatever reason, like the coffee's at a high quality level, but at some point in time, they're going to have a crop that's not. They're going to have a year that's off. And then your narrative kind of gets fucked, because you can make one of those things true, right? You can either say like, we're sticking to the relationship, we're buying this coffee and figuring out what to do with it. Or you can stick with the other side and says like, we're actually all about quality and we just can't buy this coffee. So those things have been at odds in my head for a long time, because
yeah,
I work in, most of my day-to-day work is in marketing. So it's just like talking about telling stories and how do we connect with people. And one of the things that I'm always, how do you tell a story that makes people feel something, but is also real, and you're not just pushing buttons because you can push buttons, And like, so my friend who's been working in the industry for a long time, his theory is let's just not forget about quality, but those two things have to be triaged. And the hierarchy of the triage system says that we should put the relationship first. And if people really want to do right by the farmer and do what they say they're going to do, let's say, I'm buying all your coffee no matter what. They're like, no matter what, with the expectation, it's like, cool, you're trying hard. This is a two-way street, to where it's like, you're doing everything that you need to do. And sometimes it's just not going to work out. And that's where we have more wiggle room and leverage in the system. You know what I mean? On this side of the supply chain, to say, fuck it, I'm gonna buy it, right? And I'll figure out what to do with it. Like we have more avenues to move it, because we don't have to sell it as a super high end single origin and pretend that it's something that's not. But we can sprinkle it in here, sprinkle it in there, dark roast it. What, I don't know. There's like a million ways to do it, right?
yeah,
So that's his theory. He's like, if you really want to improve the lives of coffee producers, like, actually get in long-term relationships, buy their coffee no matter what.
yeah.
That was like a micro tangent, but
No, and it's really cool because the thing that made me excited that really just I was like blew me away. And it was a lot of that. It was a lot of like it seemed like that's what Azahar was trying to do, or like somewhere like Cafe Imports, or like even other smaller exporters that we just happened to meet. They're like, there was this. It was really amazing to me because I was like, there's this sustainability that they're missing, and there are people actively in the community coming together in order to create that sustainability that they're looking for in a way that I don't think I've ever seen. And it really inspired me because I was like, I see groups here sometimes, but I don't see them as active or as like just like that sort of mentality being like actively pursued as much. And so it was just like this really cool aspect of that I saw in like Colombian coffee, or at least where they took me and showed me around. That was really awesome to see them tackle.
Seeing all that stuff, what do you think is missing from the cafe or guest experience here? Or, what stories could be told better? Like,
Yeah,
how do we connect the dots?
I think for me, like putting on my hat as like someone who runs like Swift Street, for me, it was that aspect we were talking about in the beginning where I'm like more actively, intentionally pursuing coffee pairings. Because to me, like I was talking about earlier, it was like the only way I can tell someone a story is if I can earn their trust in some way. And like food is a big part of celebration, coffee is a big part of your life. And before I can dump a bunch of information on you, I'm willing to like earn that trust from someone where I'm like, you're just coming in right now to get a cup of coffee,
Right.
and that's okay.
Yeah.
And then you're like, I see my opportunity, or I get a little bit of a chance, and I'm like, hey, you're feeling a little silly today or a little adventurous, like taste this with me. And then it's just like a taste. I don't give like a whole lot of information. I'm like, it's going to be slightly sweeter, slightly brighter than what you're used to, but just bear with me.
Mm.
And then they taste it and they're like, oh, this was really good. I still want my usual thing, but this was amazing. And then
Yeah.
all of a sudden, they're like asking for the single origin. And then all of a sudden, they're spending, shout out Brandon at Portola, spending like hundreds of dollars on different shapes of espresso glasses in order to highlight different aspects of the coffee. Um, and they're like curious about like the producer, they're curious about who we're serving, they're curious about the story, and it all starts with me just having the willingness to earn that trust. And
Mm.
so like intentionally building more opportunities to be able to tell that story from like something that people can taste, I think is something that I'm missing as a hospitality professional. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's incredible because you're hitting on a couple things that I definitely agree with. On one end, you're saying, look, before I can tell the story, I have to bring you something that's actually worth telling a story about. So I can't be feeding you garbage and saying like, hey, do you really care about this thing? And that's kind of been one of my pet peeves sometimes too, because sometimes I'll go to the place for the first time and they're just loading me up with information. And I'm just like, I want the coffee. If it's really good, I'm going to ask you about it.
Yeah.
Right. You know what I mean? If it's speaking for itself, I'm going to be like, damn, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
And then they have, free season to go. And you're saying, cool, I'm building their trust through taste and through service over time. And then when the timing is right, you're giving them just this gentle nudge down the rabbit hole, which they can opt in deeper or not. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? It's not like you need this and this is why. You're not beating them over the head with all the reasons. Just like, oh, you come in and get coffee every day. Just check this out. It's super interesting. Like something different than the norm. And then it's whether or not they like that thing isn't actually important. The thing that's important is one, you've built the trust because you've been delivering them good service for X amount of time. You're able to see where they're at, which makes people feel seen as people. It makes them feel comfortable with you, right? And
Yeah.
and makes them feel important. And then you're giving them something that's, even if they don't like it, is interesting, right? They're just like, that's a little different than what I thought that could be. And then that lives in the back of their mind for some point of time. And then, maybe it's business as usual for a week or two, and then you do it again. And soon enough, I mean, we've seen that time and time again, and it's a slow progression from,
Yeah.
16-ounce vanilla latte to straight espresso or ordering pour overs or whatever, but it happens all the time.
Yeah.
But the way that it happens is the way that you're describing, not the other way, which is you respect me and my craft, and this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
So get on board because you don't know what the da 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 da. Like, the trope of the pretentious barista is one that everybody is annoyed with now,
Yeah.
but somehow still exists. Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, what did it make you want to do anything differently immediately?
Yeah, I think so. Working in the back of house, a lot of the things we do is like, okay, how do we lean into hospitality through the food that we're creating and then like walking it out? And I think it highlighted for me just like, oh, I need to, like, as a barista and a concierge, I would drink so much coffee on a daily basis. And I still do because it's important to me and like I want to keep up with everything that we're doing. And so finding ways to bring my team along and just like speaking to it, for lack of a better term, relentlessly every day.
Yeah.
And just like creating a coffee tasting culture in the back of house that I felt was like non-existent. And I'm like, how do I inspire people to do this? And then I realized I'm like, oh, I just need to do what I did at Portola, which was like, I was just relentless about we're tasting this coffee right now. And then starting small in the same way with like, I'm not going to give them a ton of information right away. I'm just going to ask them to join me in learning a little bit about it each time that we.
Right. Consistency over time is going to
Yeah.
be how you're going to get there. Yeah.
Yeah. And so now it's really cool because I'm like tasting coffees and there's people in the back house that just like know their coffee, and it's really fun to see because shout out Zoe, like every time we do a coffee tasting, I'm like, all right, everyone but Zoe needs to tell me like what this is because she already has like
she's going first. It's like,
yeah.
Yeah. That's... What are you doing in the this is like not directly related to coffee, but in terms of building rituals and team bonding, how are you keeping energy high in the back of house?
It's moments like that.
Yeah.
It's taking time to reconnect with the craft that you're working with because sometimes you just make something. It's that same special moment when someone tastes their coffee for the first time. It's like you just take the time to taste things together and like remind each other why it's important to taste it. Like it's not just us, it's like everyone who's enjoying this. But like sometimes it's literally just pausing and being like, okay, we're stopping. I know this is like a critical time for service prep, but we're stopping and we're gonna taste this and we're gonna talk about it, whether it's like a salsa, whether it's something that might not be like where we want it to be, and we like talk about why it's not like tasting to our standard. I think people realize they're like, oh yeah, this is important to stop and talk about, and like it highlights the importance of their work. And I think that like I'd like to believe that that's energizes people when you take those moments to remind them is important.
Yeah. Man, that's really cool. Anything else you'd love to share about your trip?
Yes.
Yeah.
There was a really nerve-wracking moment in the trip that I really wanted to talk about.
Let's go.
To me, it was probably the moment where I was like, it made me feel like the weight that people unknowingly carry as like a barista or concierge or anywhere in the industry. And it was when we went to go visit this place called Technicafe and just chatting them. I don't know if you've heard of them. I think they do some really cool stuff, and like their lab's really amazing, and like the amount of information and like research that they try to provide for people is really amazing. But they hosted us, and Dul says like, yeah, we're just gonna go like taste some coffee, and like they're gonna give us this presentation. And then we got there, and they had invited like 20 producers, and it was really cool, and I was really excited. And then they're like, we're going to cup some coffee, which I was like still really amped for. I was like, this sounds awesome. Like, I'm just going to cup coffee with all of these producers. And then we went into a room, and it was me, Dulce, Fiber, who we were with, and shout out Anna. Anna's an amazing, just like coffee professional. Like, just has been in coffee, I think, over 10 years. And also got like her Q grade, like cupping thing, and like just an amazing human to learn from. But it was us like 5. And and then all of a sudden the producers roll in, and now there's 20 producers, us 5. I've cupped coffee with us, and I'm like I'm not afraid to cup coffee and talk about it. But now I'm in a room with 20 producers. They're presenting their coffee for the first time. They hand me a score sheet, which is it's probably the second time in my life that I've ever seen a cupping score sheet. And they're like, "Cool, you're gonna cup the coffee, give it a score, and then you're gonna give your feedback to the producers." And I was like, "Okay." And then I'm like, which it was a learning exercise, and they explained it after, and I was like, I wish you would have led with that because I was so nervous, like the
Right.
whole end. So I'm like, they set up the first round of the table, and I'm sitting there, and they're like going through the process, like we're getting the aromas, we're getting the first break, uh, and I go to slurp the coffee, and so I put my cupping spoon in, and my hands like shaking. I'm like barely able to get any coffee up to my mouth, and I like go to slurp, and it just like I just like sip the coffee essentially, and I'm like my body's not working because I'm so nervous, and I'm trying to get through this cupping, and it was to me it was really impactful because like once we got around to doing the feedback, I was like I couldn't do it. I was like I told Lucy I'm like this it doesn't feel good for me to give this producer feedback because I'm like I'm a barista and I'm dialed into the coffee we taste here, which has gone through a lot of intention.
Mm-hmm.
Um, versus like the people we were with were green coffee buyers. They've tasted a bunch of different coffee. They like they're really familiar with what a green coffee like market looks like and what different people are looking for, not just like what we're looking for. And I think that was I was just like reflecting on that in that moment, and I couldn't bring myself to speak. Um, but it was really cool to see the process in which they like gave them feedback because it was very like open and like, hey, we're gonna say some stuff. Like I really like that they sort of like prep the feedback and they're like, just remember like we're not coffee producers and we're not the ones directly growing the coffee. So we're giving you feedback from the perspective of like someone who has bought coffee and sold people and
Right.
tasted what they're looking for. So like take it from that perspective as we give you this.
Yeah.
And that was like I was like, oh, that's really
Yeah. That's
cool.
pretty
That was like
awesome.
that awareness.
That's a heavy story. Because it would be really easy for you to go either way and just, you kind of have to put your ego aside, right? And you're just
Yeah.
saying, like, I respect what's happening here. I don't have anything to offer in this situation, or I don't feel comfortable offering.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? It's not that you don't know how to cup coffee or wouldn't have feedback. It's just, it feels like a lot to, obviously they can make their own decisions, but it's almost like you're saying, this is right, this is wrong, you should do this next time, maybe try this. And you're like, I'm
yeah.
out of my league here on this one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's what I felt because I was like again like I've tasted coffee, I've cupped coffee in the roastery, and like I've given myself feedback in like roasting coffee or like Jared has taken me in like cup coffee, and he was the one that originally showed me the scoring sheet, but it's all been through the lens of what we're looking for
Right.
in specialty coffee, not as a general like broader perspective as I guess the coffee industry as a whole. And that was for me where it was like really heavy. I'm like I can't I don't feel comfortable giving these people feedback as just someone who I feel like has a very narrow lens
Yeah.
on the tasting coffee
Yeah.
in comparison.
Yeah, that's cool. Man, that's awesome. Yeah, dude, I'm stoked you got to go. That's really cool.
Yeah.
I know it took a long time.
Dude, it like it doesn't I'm really thankful that I got to go, and I'm really thankful that I work somewhere that gives people those opportunities. Like thank you guys. Um Here I am just blasting my own company like just like but like I genuinely mean it. Like I like this has been my favorite place to work, and it's why I've been here so long. Like it's been an amazing workplace, and it's been amazing to get the opportunity to try to continue to make it in a like a great work.
Yeah, man, thank you. We're stoked you're here. It's killer. Like it's really cool as time goes by, it makes me appreciate how do you even say this without sounding like a jerk or something? It's like I appreciate everyone that comes through their doors in the sense of I know if you got a job here, you could get a job somewhere else. So at some level, it's a choice, and we're kind of upfront with that at orientation too, because it's like, if you just want something that's a chill, the easiest job you've ever had, this is a really bad place for you to work. Like, you can go work a million other places that will be way more chill. If you're interested to, if you get energy out of making people's day and want to learn some things that'll serve you later along the way, this could be a good place for you. And then there's some people who stay for 6 months, and there's some people who stay for a year, and that's great. We need those people, and those people have been shown to be able to, in that amount of time, be able to give amazing service. And it's like I was looking at Haley, her coffee has just gotten exponentially better over the past couple months.
Yeah.
From coming from the concierge, getting on the bar, and then everybody, getting put on bar is wild, especially in a place like Swift. It's a really busy cafe. You're kind of doing a lot, so you're simultaneously managing the line and trying to get your barista chops to where they need to be. And then at some point, everything just clicks, and it's like, oh, this is a perfect cappuccino. This is great,
Yeah.
And so to see that happen is awesome. And then there's people like you and your brother, Dulce, Mark. Like, there's this other group of people that's been here for such a long time, and it's really cool because I don't have to go. And the same thing for Jared and Charles. It's like none of us go to sleep at night and are like, man, I wonder what the hell's going on in the kitchen. It's that stress is removed, and you see beautiful things coming out, and everyone is happy. And the ability to do that is because, one, it's because you're interested and you get some sort of joy out of it, I'd assume. And,
A lot of joy.
And you understand what we're trying to do as an organization. And when you have those people who have been here 5, 6, 7 years, that you can see that kind of ratchet turning. And I'm like, oh, wow, Mark's having a meeting with the guy who's building up this crazy multi-million-dollar hotel, and it's a big thing. And I'm just like, wow, Mark's just doing it. Dulce's over here making our green coffee schedule. Like, here are the coffees that we're going to buy next year. I'm just like, wow, all these things are just working. So it's like, dude, thank you. It's really cool to be able to see that happen. Especially in the face of, and people are like, you're nuts, this is never going to work. And I'm like, no, I think people can do really great things given the right environment and opportunity. And some people are just kind of grumpy about that. They're like, I don't know, man, people are lazy. And I'm like, I don't believe you. I think I think people want to do something special. That's my gut feeling. And then anyway, yeah, thanks for being here.
Yeah.
and thanks for taking the time to chat about this. I think it's really cool. Not everybody gets the opportunity to go on these trips to hear from people who have been. I don't know. I think it's inspiring, man.
Yeah. Thanks for letting me share.
Yeah, respect. End of the podcast, everybody. See you later, Wiser.
Hey everyone, that's the podcast for the week. Thanks so much for listening. If you heard something that inspired you, let us know, or tell a friend. These are the types of connections that are the most important to us and that we seek to create every day. If there's something you heard and you want to know more about, send us an email to podcast@catandcloud.com or head to our website, catandcloud.com/podcast, and let us know. While you're on our site, check out everything we have to offer. Dive deep into one of our single origin coffees or pick up a little treat for yourself. We have something for everyone, so check it out. Also, find us in the usual places, YouTube, Instagram. We're always there sharing amazing things. All right, that's it. Thanks everyone for being awesome. We'll be back next week.